share my screen. So essentially, I'm going to be walking through the PDF that was sent earlier with the chat. So if you wanted to follow along, you could. Otherwise, like the presentation will kind of help get your mind in gear before you approach finding a therapist or a mental health self-check. And so I want to open by just saying that, like, the goal with this presentation is to engage stigmas around mental health and engage anything going on in your life actively. And so for myself, I'm coming from a place where I embrace the mantra of own your story before you tell your story. And so I've done quite a bit of work in this field on myself in the past, but I've like come to terms with all of that. So like experience wise, as to why you should listen to me, like I have overcome post-traumatic stress disorder following several car accidents. One resulting in an injury that turned into chronic pain due to a sense of like fight or flight, just like forever in my brain. And so overcoming chronic pain is also kind of like in the mental health arena. Postpartum depression, I've battled that. I have family members with mental illnesses. I have children who are neurodiverse, which is not a mental illness per se, but it certainly engages this arena. And the more you know, the better equipped you are to engage actively the things going on in your life. So I just share that out of orientation to this topic. So the first page of the PDF that was sent out is finding a therapist, a checklist. And the idea behind this is to kind of parse it down, set to one question at a time, identifying what's important to you and how important is it. So to take one column, you say, yes, this is important to me, no, this is not, and then give it a number between 1 and 10, 10 being the most important thing to you. So you'll see here that I kind of filled it out based on like what I look for in a therapist. And so honestly, my 10s are they in network with my insurance? What is my deductible? What is my copay? Kind of like having that in my brain helps me. I need my therapy sessions to be virtual because it's incredibly difficult for me to orchestrate the care that I need for my kids in order to take care of myself. And so it's just important to do what you're going to find the least resistance to. So if doing it in your remote space is not the greatest, then you're going to want to like try to find someone that you can meet with in person. So just an internal check of like, hey, do I have resistance to any of this? Because the more you can make roadblocks you can get out of the way ahead of time, the better. And of course, like faith is a very important question to ask yourself. Is it important to me to find a therapist of the same faith? I lucked out and I found a Christian therapist who gives very wholesome sessions around the whole person. And so while she's not Catholic, like she appreciates that I bring my Catholicism into our sessions quite a bit. So credential-wise, there's 3 different kind of types of therapists out there. Psychologists focus solely on mental health. Psychiatrists are able to prescribe medication, and then counselors are focused on general therapy. So for myself, I've got, more than one kind of complex issue going on. So I kind of stay away from the general therapists and I look for a psychologist myself. But on my rating scale, I only gave that one like a 7. If they don't have the credentials that you're looking for, but it's a good fit for you personally, like it's okay to like be flexible on that for me. Homeopathic needs. Do I need help assessing homeopathic support? So this is like, what kind of supports am I comfortable with? Am I wanting someone to help me like, okay, like you need to look at your desk and say like, what on my desk doesn't need to be here to clear out my mental landscape, or what in my home is not working and is creating more strife than it needs to, and how can I address that? Or is there like for my chronic neck pain? Is there something topical that I can use to help me get through the day? Or I have a neck wrap that I absolutely love. And whenever I'm in a lot of pain, that's what I get out to reset my nervous system. So those homeopathic aids, and a therapist can help you assess stuff like that. And then medication. Do I need help finding appropriate medication? For myself, I am on a low dose of an antidepressant, and there's nothing wrong with that. I did see like this beautiful, it was a really short YouTube video of like somebody talking about antidepressants, because a lot of people have this stigma that like once you're on them, like you should be able to get off of them. And yes, that is actually like the goal. But if they are working and your life is very stressful or in a stressful season, then switching your perspective, to address medications like antidepressants as if you were talking to somebody who's on diabetes and has diabetic medication that they need to address an imbalance. And so with chemical imbalances that lead to depression, like if your medication is addressing the imbalance in your life, it is okay to take it. It's good to take it. It's good to engage that symptom. And so having someone to talk through stuff like that with is also very helpful. Like, what am I taking right now? Is it helping me? It's just good to be aware. And then diagnoses. Would a diagnosis help unlock the language of advocacy? And the language of advocacy is something that we're going to talk about in a later slide. But for me, when I was finally diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, it was like a huge weight off of my shoulders because I was approaching everything like a scared lamb. And even like things like my phone buzzing, vibrating, like I couldn't have my vibrate on because everything startled me. But having language around why that was so healing for me, just having the words around it. And then also with a diagnosis, they gave me a path forward. So the key for any diagnosis is that it be a path forward. Experience. Does this practitioner have experience in the arena where I need support? Hi. You got hurt. Oh, there you go. For instance, my current practitioner has experience with partner violence. And so, unfortunately, in my journey, my husband and I are separated due to an incident of domestic violence against our oldest daughter. And so finding a therapist who understands that arena and can engage it for me was very important. Reviews. Are there reviews available on this therapist that I can trust? Like, some people really like to do their research. And if that's something you're really good at, then that might be an important factor for you. Gender. Is it important for me to find someone of the same gender as me? And this can be important too, like if you are contemplating like marriage counseling, because like for my husband and I, when we were going through marriage counseling, it was like he would be more comfortable with a man and I didn't have a preference. And so we did seek out a male therapist for that particular therapy. And then honestly, like for my oldest daughter who is seeing a therapist after that traumatic event, like she's actually seeing a gentleman therapist, which is like very helpful because otherwise she'd probably like grow into this fear of men due to her experiences. However, she's getting a different experience from a different therapist or a different man who offers those things that were maybe missing in that paternal relationship. Dignity. Is my dignity affirmed by my therapist and this practice, even in the language used in the intake phase? So if you're calling to ask about a therapist and they have a front desk clerk who is checked out, and who is perhaps like you can tell they're overwhelmed, like that, you might just want to hang up. Because, I honestly like have seen like the best therapists that I have a supportive office staff who are in turn supported by the staff itself. And so you have highly equipped, very gentle souls working at the front desk who can offer empathy while they're doing the intake. Tools. Am I offered the tools that I need to build skills in my arena of struggle. And so a lot of times, like, we can have big feelings or big life issues that are up here and tools to address that are down here. And so a therapist can help build the tools or our toolkit up to where we have an arsenal of things that get us closer to dealing with that big issue. It's not going to make the issue go away necessarily, but it's going to equip you better to engage the issue. And so, like with my neurodiverse kids, I do a lot of reading on autism and on OCD. And that has done a world of good for me, just like engaging the tool set that they need to engage their symptoms. Alignment. Does this treatment method align with my goals and beliefs? And that one got bolded, and it got a 10 from me. So that one I find to be very important. And that one can kind of cover like more than one arena too. Like someone who supports my background, supports my faith base, supports my goals, my 5-year plan for my mental and physical health. And support. Can I partner with this person and turn to face my problems? And so that really is the sign of a really good therapist, is someone who will turn with you towards your problems to help flush out those creative solutions or skills that need extra support. And a referral. Is there a peer that I trust facing something similar that I could ask for a referral? So and that really just depends on like your comfort level with sharing things like this with your peers or your friends before you would maybe get a recommendation that you could trust out of that. But again, like you get to choose which one of these of all of these are important to you, and you get to assign them a number. And everybody's checklist is going to be different, and it's going to be as unique and unrepeatable as you are. So we're moving into the mental health self-examine, and I laughed with more than one person that I had a meeting with this morning, because this weekend I was traveling all weekend to see my brothers. We got in late. My kids were really grumpy this morning, and so like I didn't shower this morning, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna show up. And my like standard of care is like, okay, am I at least semi-presentable? And can I wear a shirt that is comfortable and clean? Those are my 2 standards. And then again, like I'm never going to complain about being able to wear sweatpants to work. Which is the beauty of remote work, is that you only see the top up. But when I was compiling this list, this first one was actually one of the things that was like very telling for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, like I live like pretty close to the frumpy line. On appearance. And so when we're doing a self-examine, like this is just a chance to be honest with yourself and to ask questions that maybe haven't occurred to you because you are in fight or flight mode, or because the things going on in your life are very distracting, like my sweet little circus animals over here. And so appearances, the care that I take of my appearance can open up a means to express how I see myself. And so any changes that we make in these arenas, they're not going to happen overnight. And this is just a matter of getting a starting point so that you have something you can talk to with a therapist, or understand like what you're actually even looking for. Like what are your arenas of struggle? Behavior. That's how I act. How are my responses during the day? So it ranges from friendly all the way down to like just angry responses all the time. And so I kind of live between like medium friendly and irritable because my resources are very limited, honestly. And they're dictated by my little minions who I love dearly, but who require a lot of my internal resources right now. And so by the end of the day, my resources are tapped out. And so knowing that about myself can help me better engage the end of the day where I'm just like feeling on that irritable side. Speech. Do I speak intentionally? Or is there so much going on in my head that I speak rapidly, or I feel pressured, or I am detached from others and speaking distractedly? So like this detachment line kind of is like when you wax into avoidance or numbing as a means of dealing with life in general. And so I do kind of tend to live in the intentional speech category, because for me, like, language and words are just the first fundamental thing that can dignify any experience. Mood. How do I greet the day? And its problems. So am I receiving problems as like, hey, everybody has problems and we'll get through this too? Or do little things just send me off the rails? Okay, so I kind of wax towards the anxious side. And this is just due to, like, I am battling, like, depression in general, but, like, me being anxious, that's actually, like, a step forward for me. And so acknowledging, like, little victories as they come is very important too in this kind of work. So your affect, which would be how others perceive me. So I feel like others perceive me as pretty engaged, but this can wax into, like, blunted, where you're like, you ask a simple question and you get, like, a staccato response from somebody, or apathetic, where it's really hard to engage someone into being interested in anything. Your thoughts. So this one is a circle any that are relevant, and it's just something to, like, do a self check with. Are any of these speaking to you? So the question of, you are enough, or always feeling like you're chasing something. And so for me, I circled things like anxiety, depression. I have an internal critic that's pretty loud, and I actually have been making a lot of really good progress with engaging my internal critic and getting it to quiet down. But it's a very all hands on deck activity. I'm more pragmatic. I do get fatigued pretty often, or like mental fatigue, where it's just like at a certain point in the day, I'm just taxed. I'm tapped out. Cognition. Cognition denotes a relatively high level of processing of specific information, including thinking, memory, perception, motivation, skilled movements, and language. I would say I'm like pretty normal intelligence-wise, and like maybe, like, you know, a little smarter than the average bear, but not near genius. Whereas, like, my spouse is at the near genius level, and that kind of creates a more logical mind frame from which he sees the world. So it can be really important to look at this section and, like, take a self check with, like, hey, where am I at on this bar? And then judgment. What is your capacity to make appropriate decisions and appropriately act on them in social situations? I tend to be in the hypervigilant side, honestly, and so I've lived at the very, like, tail end of this for a long time, and so me even being closer to sound judgment is improvement. Limited judgment or impaired judgment, where the world just seems upside down. Okay, so this slide, we're going to talk about the arenas of the people in your life. So we need to examine our spheres of influence and ask ourselves if they are rightly ordered. So when we're approaching mental health, always, always, always begin with yourself. Care for self extends to care for others. It's that age-old idiom of, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's just, if there's nothing there, nothing will come out. And so making it a priority and allowing yourself the space to care for your needs first before you move on to anybody else in your life. And then we have the next side up is your nuclear family. So that would include your spouse and your children. Following that, your immediate family, so your parents, your siblings, your nieces, your nephews, and then your in-laws, which would be your spouses, parents, siblings, nieces, and nephews, finishing out with your extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, and then I would probably put friendships up in this top level too, because once you become aware of your mental health or you're working on it, it can be easy to start picking up things in other people. But just remember that like you want to come to them from a place of wellness or ownership of your story before you approach them about anything going on in their lives. For instance, my father-in-law is bipolar, and so like he has big issues, and they do affect me because there is the ability of the mental health of others around you to create ripples in your life, and it does. However, it is not my priority to engage my father-in-law's mental health. It becomes my priority when my father-in-law's mental health affects my husband's mental health or my children's mental health. And that's when I kind of make judgment calls about what to say and when to say it. The other reason we look at this is we need to identify our natural support systems. And so, like, for instance, like, I have a sister-in-law who has been in my life since I was 16, I think. They met when they were 18, and then they've been married for forever. And so she's like a blood sister to me. And so I go to her as a natural support for the things that I deal with. And she and my brother have an autistic son as well. And so like they've been through a lot of the same life experiences as me. And I will be very honest that like my ability to be present to my children and to especially my autistic daughter, I learned so much from my sister-in-law's ability to vulnerably allow me to walk with her through her journey with Judah. And so it just speaks to the power of relationship. And so, but you do have to identify what is safe to explore with another person. Trust is built gradually, and you do have to kind of be aware of the natural boundaries. Okay, final slide and my favorite one. I have dreams of writing a whole book called The Language of Advocacy. And it's because like I have seen just from like my daughter having an autism diagnosis, the role that I have in dignifying her life and dignifying her experience and dignifying her mental health. And that comes through the language that I use. And so the main goal here, or the key takeaway here that I would love for you to take with you is that your dignity is outside of dysfunction. So no matter what's going on, what your experiences are, if it's not something that you did like yourself, like your dignity, and even if it is like your own mental health struggle, like my struggles with depression, like my dignity is outside of my diagnosis. It's outside of depression. Valerie's dignity is outside of her autistic diagnosis. Whether or not their paternal grandfather has the ability to be present to their lives does not take away from their dignity as persons. And so that's like the most important stepping stone to approaching the language of advocacy. And then viewing diagnosis as more than a label. It is the beginning of a path forward. And so using that information, so for like the autism spectrum, it's a spectrum, and there are a lot of different ways to be on the spectrum, and every person on the spectrum is as unique and unrepeatable as the diagnosis itself. And so there are specific arenas of struggle that Valerie has that are specific to her diagnosis. And so it really is the beginning, and then we have to take that and move forward with it. Is there a diagnosis that can adjust my developmentally appropriate expectations of the other person? So I adjust my developmentally appropriate expectations for Valerie, because developmentally she's more alongside of my 2-year-old who's almost 3. So developmentally they're about the same age. So I call them my developmental twins. And that helps me approach what's appropriate for her at this level. Does my language honor the dignity of the person? And if you're sitting side by side with something and talking about something in their life that you've observed, you want to keep it very level. So you talk about, what symptoms have I observed? What triggers have I observed? So like if I'm in my daughter's life and I'm observing her symptoms and her triggers, I know that like her inability to affect change or have the language that she needs to get what she wants affects her. And so if she's seeming more triggered, that means I have to slow down and like walk alongside her a lot more that day to make sure that she knows that it doesn't matter that she doesn't have the language around that I'm here to listen to whatever it is she can say and try to meet her needs. So how has this affected my relationship with this person? So if you are sitting side by side with someone and a diagnosis might be helpful, you can talk about how not having language around their issues has affected you. For example, my husband has been undiagnosed autistic his whole life. And it became necessary to sit down with him and say, okay, you not having a diagnosis or understanding what is affecting you affects our relationship and your relationship with your kids. And it just keeping it very like objective can help diffuse that from some of the emotional responses that a conversation like this could engender. So what tools or skills could help alleviate some of these symptoms? So if there's ways that you can adjust your environment, if there's skills that you can develop as a team, or ways that you can provide accountability for somebody, like those are the ways that we can engage. Is there anything in the environment contributing to these observations? Progress is not linear, and that's something that we've talked about as a company as well, where trending upward doesn't necessarily mean a straight line. Life happens in the messy middle, and it often looks like, a little bit crazy. How can I support this person in the messy middle? We need to use active listening, and two key phrases that help with that are the phrase, tell me more, which really just leaves it up to them to like feel free to share or not, and then to repeat back. So like what I hear is this. So then you test what you're hearing against what they're saying, and then they have the freedom to say, oh no, not quite that, let me try again. And then how can I change to become more accommodating to this person? So instead of putting it all on them, if you're coming alongside somebody, you're going to want to ask, like, how can I be more accommodating? And then how can I or what boundaries can I preserve this relationship with this person? And a boundary requires the other person to do nothing. And that, honestly, like this last piece is what I'm focusing on this summer with my kids, because Sophia is very socially driven. And so she will do anything to keep the relationship going, the play going, even if it's like not going well. Like Cassie and Valerie are actively hitting her in the head. Like, no, you that's a boundary. You stand up and you walk away from that. And so kind of like reviewing boundaries from this arena can help determine whether it's actually a boundary or if it's a request. So like, please don't call me names. Nope, that's a request. Versus, okay, if we're arguing and you call me a name, I will be walking away and taking a half an hour break. And this is not me running away from the argument. This is not me being childish. This is me preserving my boundary. And we can come back to this when we're both calmer. Or like Sophia, like, if you hit me, I walk away. And she kind of views this as like a loss to her, where she's like, I just want to play with them. But really, it preserves their dignity and it preserves their relationship. If you don't stay in a conflict, that is a breach of a boundary. Okay, so that is all that I have as far as the presentation, and I would be very happy to open it up to questions or thoughts or things that got stirred up. And of course, I do know that mental health is very hard to talk about, so if anybody wants a